All right, everybody, welcome. We have put on our makeup. My bindi is out. I did not get time to wax my eyebrows, but this is happening. Welcome to the first episode of Behenchara with Manya, Chauhan and Srishti Chopra. I just said Behenchara in a very weird accent. Now I am conscious about it. So over to you, Srishti.
Hi everyone, I'm Srishti. Welcome to Behenchara, and here's to many more fun conversations.
I am Manya Chauhan, one of the co-founders of Behenchara, and as Srishti just mentioned it is my brain baby. We will be talking about a lot of things in here, a lot of politically correct and politically incorrect things in here. And this
when we were talking about this, she was like, "I'm going to get you cancelled on the internet," and I'm like, "Man, I'm waiting for that." Like, what is Behenchara to do? And now that we've established it's absolutely your brainchild. I mean, Manya posted a story on Instagram that Behenchara is my legacy. I want to be remembered by Behenchara. So what is the essence of Behenchara? Why are we doing this?
All right. So to sum it up in one word, Behenchara is something that I feel is very liberating to me right now, and is something that will liberate women who are going to come in future. Not just women, like all human beings that are going to come in future from the prejudices and the shackles that we are living in right now. So one line answer this, and then the extended conversation is going to happen for a long time. That is the reason we created this podcast.
And adding to that, I think talking about patriarchy, especially, and when Mana says it, we're here to dismantle some prejudice for women. I think patriarchy also affects men and other genders.
Yes, that is the reason, not just shackles of women, shackles of human beings in general.
Right. So if not equally, it still affects like other genders as well, which is why I think more than just being like having a feminist orientation with Behenchara, we'd like to see it is intersectional. It is in ways more than one, addressing a lot of people of different identities, people of different expressions, and I think this is something I think which makes Behenchara very unique. And even though it has Behen in it, we're using Behen as a gender neutral term almost. Well, it's not possible. It might be grammatically incorrect, but we're using Behen as a gender neutral word here.
And also, I think personally, because the kind of friendship that I have had in my life, the relationship that I've had with my Behens has been something that has kept me sane, that has kept me alive, quite literally. A very, like, there was a wave of a suicidal, there was like a low wave of suicidal mental health crisis in between, and my Behens kept me sane towards, like, during that period. And it is very interesting when we say that patriarchy does not affect both genders equally, because I was thinking about it in bathroom the other day, because that's where I think, because that's where I do not have my phone. So the human being inside me comes out, and it's like, okay, let's question whatever is happening. So the conclusion that I reached was that, is it because of capitalism? Because we are not, putting in so much weight, and we are not giving so much importance to the emotional happiness of human beings, that we are saying that patriarchy does not affect both genders equally. But if I see this from like a human aspect, and maybe it is because this year my greatest project is going to be working on my mental health, working on my personality, unlearning all the traumatic, unhealthy childhood patterns I have. This is the reason I'm putting in so much weight into this. But when we say that patriarchy does not affect men that much, because क्या ही हो रहा है उनको, सिर्फ यही तो बोला जा रहा है कि they should not be crying, they should be living with the burden of being the prime bread earner of their family, not be expressive enough, always be strong. So what is the balance in here, and is capitalism to blame?
Absolutely. I don't think that we can put the blame on any one thing, ideology, notion, or subject, or even a person. I think we as entire society, I think we have to recalibrate how we have perceived people and ideas in general. So capitalism for sure is a part of it, and but in ways more than one, capitalism has also empowered and it has carried the torch for, I personally feel, for dismantling patriarchy. I mean, come to think of it, if it were not for Zoom, again a capitalistic idea, an entrepreneurial idea, we could not have had this conversation. So I think internet, which is again can be called a brainchild of capitalism, it kind of gave us that platform that we had not had earlier. Our the generations previous to us, it did not have this platform, and we got it courtesy of capitalism. So yeah, capitalism. See, capital. What does capitalism do? It is a mere reflection of society. It bounces off of society, and no capitalist inherently takes the bane or blame of pushing the society forward. It is a mere reflection. It is not a socialist agenda or a communist agenda. So I think in first place they just capitalize on our insecurities. But then by capitalizing on our insecurities, they also create platforms. And when they create platforms, people like you and me, however privileged we are and however polished we are, coming from upper middle class and upper caste families, we still, when we have access to these platforms, we can actually be the bearers of bringing that kind of reform. So I think capitalism is a double-edged sword, and like anything in this world. So, and it's a funny thing, that's what being a debater does to you. That's what being a debater does to you. You can probably counter or support any idea, any random idea.
We have
That's what being.
a we have a personal turn the code competition going on in our head at all times. We'll support the argument, then we'll reject the argument.
And
All
I
right.
think
Yeah, yeah.
also when if we establishing the tone for this podcast, our attempt is just to have the conversations that spread across the spectrum. We are not in any way endorsing what kind of view is right. We are no
I don't
we
think
cannot.
I don't think I just at any point in my life ever thought that I am a right human being. So
Exactly.
maybe Srishti, like the conversations you will have with Srishti are going to be the ones that will maybe be right somehow, but that is not the burden I am taking in here. I am probably the controversial one.
Equally, I think I wouldn't want to carry the burden of being righteous at all times. I think,
And you
like I
are.
always say, superiority of thought is something none of us can warrant. But so coming back to Behenchara, essentially we are attempting to have a discourse. We are attempting to have those conversations that are extremely fundamental and that hardly happen in our households or
Brown
in our
households, specifically in
brown
brown
households.
households.
I think all over the world as well, primarily, but majorly, predominantly in brown households.
The older generation who's just trying to understand what goes into their kids' mind, you are most welcome to have a conversation with us every week. All right, Srishti, I have been informed by the unplanned conversation that we had the other day that you would like to share a story about periods because menstruation is one of the arms of Behenchara. We wish to make it inclusive of all genders who menstruate. We wish to make it more accessible to people across all privileged boards, and we wish to increase the general knowledge people have about their vagina. Personally, for me, I would love to say the word vagina as many times as possible in this particular podcast. That is the personal goal I am coming in with. So,
Normalizing that.
Srishti, talk about vagina, blood coming out of vagina when you were
Okay,
a
so
baby.
I think
Not
now that
maybe.
so I think menstruation, which is going to be a very important arm of Behenchara here on. I think we too are very passionate about feminine hygiene and empowerment. So I think talking about menstruation, सबसे पहले तो it's not a woman's issue. मतलब
Preach,
like people
preach.
often associate menstruation with कि this is associated to women or girls. ऐसा नहीं है. It's not a woman's issue. It's not women's issue. It is a human rights issue. Matlab, it is, there are, except women and girls, there are other people who also menstruate, like transgender men. So transgender men menstruate, but transgender women, they do not menstruate. So it's not a woman's issue. It's also and then women carry children.
Non-binary people.
Yeah, non-binary people, of course. I mean, so first things first, let's just establish that menstruation is not, it's not something that only bothers women. It's a human rights issue. I think UN also identified it as a public health issue some time back. So I mean, it's very much fundamental to recognize that this is something everyone needs to be more cognizant of. And I think our policymakers, stakeholders, all of them need to be more aware of what menstruation essentially means. तो अभी हम menstruation के बारे में इससे बात करें. I think starting off, let's share our first period story कि कैसा था. मतलब
क्या सीन
imagine overshare हो जाएगा थोड़ा सा. We might overshare it. But what was your first period? Like how did you have your first period? What was it like? Didn't know about it.
All right. So I would like to divide this in two parts because, like, I have PCOS, and so my period came on very later in life. So of course I knew about it. There were medicines going on to, to correct something that was extremely wrong in my body. And so how was I first introduced to the idea of periods is something that should be discussed because it is so funny and it just defines the kind of relationship I have with it right now and the relationship I have with my reproductive system right now. I was in class 3 coming back from my school, and it was not the school that it was not the branch of the school that I eventually, passed my high school from. It was some other branch. Coming back, and there was a murmur in my bus amongst Didis, older Behens, that something was discussed in school, and because we were younger, we were not a part of that seminar that had occurred. And boys were discussing that, girls went away for a period or two, and then they came back, and then they were not telling us what the discussion was about. And I was a very, very curious child to the point that maybe I must have been extremely irritating. Like, God bless my parents for handling that curiosity. So I bugged a Didi. She told me that the only thing I can tell you is period. Now you go home and ask your mother. And my mother is so cute, an extremely cute middle class woman, just living in a big metropolitan city. Most mothers, extremely cute. And I went to her, she was chopping something, and I said, Mama, I need to ask you something in Hindi. Mama, kuch puchna hai mere ko, because ghar mein aise we do not talk in English. We are not that kind of a family. And I told ki, Mama, Didi ne bola period. What is that? My mother stopped chopping, and I'm not even dramatizing it. This is exactly what happened. My mother stopped chopping and she was like, I do not know. And went on with her thing. But then a curious child, and she and I was not convinced with the answer. So I followed up, and then I got a big dart because she was like, if she's going to discuss it in Bahar ka dunya, so what will people think? Ki kya sikha rahe hai apne bachche ko ghar pe? So I knew that it was something very taboo, and because I was not given a reason why I am not supposed to talk about it, I talked about it a lot. I researched about it a lot. I went down an internet rabbit hole and read all about it. That is what you get for shutting down curiosity of an annoying child. And then eventually everybody in my class got their period. And we used to go to bathrooms together to discuss, and it was a very hush-hush topic. Nobody used to, everybody used to keep their pad aise ekdam dhyan se. And then eventually in class 9th, I got my period. I was at my mama's place. So my elder sister then taught me whatever she knew about it, because she's just like 5 years older than I am. So whatever she knew, she taught me कि अच्छा ऐसे ऐसे होता है, ऐसे ऐसे होता है, you need to do this with your pad, you need to do this, and you need to dispose it यहाँ पर. And then she said, do you have any other questions? I was like, yes, you are my savior, I will ask you everything. And to most of the answers, her reply was, I do not know about this exactly. So I was like, interesting. So, and in my head, she was an adult because I was in school and she was 5 years older than I was. We're like, okay, adults also do not understand what it is, and it is something that is happening to her. So what is that about?
Practically, yeah. So ये तो बहुत, this is extremely common and something I have also recognized that even those who are experiencing it, they don't know about it. So say menstruators, they don't know about what menstruation, they don't know what menstruation is. How can you imagine someone who's not menstruating every month almost? How can we expect them to know about it? And I think this is where we got to be a little more gentle, especially with boys, who are growing up and who are not as familiar with menstruation. So I think the problem is maybe that we're not educated about it enough, and there is still
Also,
some
a
kind of
lot of
shame that
stigma, a
associated
lot
with
of
it.
stigma.
Yeah,
And
and
this is the story of a extremely privileged school in Mumbai, in like a posh Mumbai locality. I am narrating, I am not even talking about like a some other place wherein you imagine that period is a stigma. This is the story of a highly posh school in Mumbai. So
right.
imagine where this
And
discussion happened. And
I think a lot of women also face social exclusion when they're on their periods. Like they're ostracized heavily while they're menstruating. And
yes,
I personally think more than menstruation for sure is a taboo, but it's because people perceive menstruation as either a abnormal, as something that's not normal, something that's dirty, something that's impure, right? Or they consider menstruation to be an extremely private subject,
subject.
so yeah, like
And
often
then that,
brown families have this culture where if anything is private, they would like to discuss it within the confines of their households. They won't like it to go out, right? If the
and
child is making,
for this
whereas
matter it
civil
is just
crime
between,
protection,
and for this
see,
matter in most families it is between those two three women who live in that particular household. The topic is not even discussed with the men who are living with men who are living in that household. So how
and
bizarre.
I think that's because women are taught that menstruation is something that is extremely private. That's something that they're supposed to
Feel shame
they're supposed
about.
to manage in
Yeah.
solitude. And then when they start to manage it in solitude, then comes the shame. Then comes the it being tabooed, status. Then comes the stigmatization of the particular subject, and also because
Yes.
people are not aware of it, and then comes, I think, when moving on to from menstruation being tabooed and stigmatized, I think our policy makers and decision makers have a great role to play in it, where um where I think there's no recognition of menstruation while
True.
allocating resources. What is our government, what are our stakeholders, even the flag bearers of capitalism, what are they doing per
Did
se to
you
make sure.
did you see that reel on Instagram? I'm so sorry that my knowledge comes by consuming pop culture thingies.
No,
But there
no,
was a
don't be
reel
sorry
where,
about that.
but like there was a reel wherein top scientists of NASA sent a women to space
Yeah,
for like a
yeah, I
month's
did that. And in
mission,
fact, I shared it.
and
Yeah, I shared it.
and they asked her if 100 tampons are gonna be enough for her menstrual
Yeah,
cycle.
yeah,
It just defines the culture. You guys have no idea what's up, what's going on, and you are the
I
greatest
think,
brains of this planet somehow.
yeah. So which clearly makes, gives out a signal that, some things, maybe like menstruation, the tabooed nature of menstruation is one thing that cuts across all barriers.
True.
You could be in a posh locality in Mumbai, or you could be in a slum in Delhi. You could be a scientist at NASA, or you could be a daily wage earner. You, all of these people, they taboo menstruation equally, which says a lot about our education, which says a lot about the kind of societal norms we tend to follow. And
And a
I
lot
think,
about the kind of treatment that we have been giving non-male bodies. Like not to put
yeah,
a gender in it, but like for bodies that do not have a penis, the kind of
right.
attention that body is getting in
Women
science,
do
in
not have
politics,
bodily autonomy. Women do not have bodily autonomy. We could see
at
that,
all.
say, the westernized world, so called, they're they're debating on whether abortion should be legal or not. I mean, in 21st century, we're sitting here, we're experiencing a pandemic, and we're discussing whether abortion is should be a choice or not. Seriously, do we really need to do that? I mean, that's like saying putting a ban on, putting a some kind of restriction on masturbation per se. You could not masturbate. Imagine,
The amount of
imagine.
audacity.
I'm sorry. I don't want to be bashing men here. But imagine if men were to
We are
carry
not
the
bashing them. We are just trying
yeah,
to create a parallel wherein they see, because like a lot of people, I'm not saying that they are bad at heart or they have some malintention in their mind. They're just not able to draw a parallel that अगर तुम इतना सारे टाइम अपने stories पे अपनी real life conversations में feminism चिल्लाती रहती हो तो वो क्यों करती हो? We're just trying to draw a parallel, and because it is our podcast, Srishti, we can say anything. If somebody has a problem, they can create their own podcast called I Do Not Agree with Behens and then put their opinion forward. But my dear Behen, you are free to say everything. Please continue. Do not apologize.
and also, if this is something you do not agree with, please feel free to hit me up, and I'd be willing to have that conversation with you. I mean, it's time we have this conversation. It's time someone actually walks up to me and says, I disagree with you. And probably we can have a conversation and we can mend that gap that exists. Do you not think that what is okay? So I'm a feminist at heart, hardcore feminist. My Instagram bio, it says I'm a feminist. But have you ever thought why there exists such a big gap between feminists and other people? Because feminism associates a superiority of thought with itself, and people perceive feminism to be something that it's absolutely not, right? And
But I don't think that most of the time it is because they misunderstand the agenda. I think most of the time it happens wherein people who are currently in position of privilege are just not willing to give it up, and that is
because they
okay.
don't
I
recognize
respect.
the privilege.
Yeah,
Because
I
they don't
respect
recognize
that.
the privilege.
I
Because
respect
they
that
don't
about you, but just don't make it into something that we do not understand why you women are, so angry that you have a. Okay, anywho, taking the conversation back to how was your
menstruation.
first period? How was your first menstrual cycle, Srishti?
My period story was hilarious, downright hilarious. So वो बच्चे नहीं होते हैं जो अपना बबल बना के उस बबल में रहते हैं. I was that
Perfect.
kid.
Beautiful.
Right. So like I genuinely was that kid. I didn't care about anything in the world as long as I'm getting my food, as long as I'm getting my sleep, as long as I'm passionate about something and I'm pursuing it. मेरे को घंटा फर्क नहीं पड़ता था दुनिया में क्या चल रहा है. I mean, of course, I was passionate about social issues, borderline aware of them, but menstruation was something that I was not familiar with at all. I didn't know there could exist a concept. And now the simple question is,
I have a question.
what went through your mind when you saw whisper ads and everything?
Yes,
Obviously,
exactly.
I thought, okay, drum rolls, please. I thought, I'm saying it now. I was a smart kid. My class topper, by the way, back then. I thought it's an adult diaper.
Not
It's
wrong.
a diaper for adult women. And
Not
this
wrong.
says a lot. I was wrong, but it's not my fault. Do they
No,
really show
that's
blood?
not. That's not wrong because they were not showing red color thing pouring on that pad. It is blue. So if
Please
somebody
show
who
me
has
blood. I thought imagine I was a smart kid. I was really intelligent, all right, academically brilliant, living my best life. And I thought that pads, sanitary pads to be precise, they are diapers for adult women. I thought that.
we wish.
And I'm always wondering why do these women, as soon as they as soon as they wear these sanitary pads, they're jumping in the air as if they've got wings. As if they have got wings and not their pads. ये सीन हो रहा था और मैं यहाँ पे भाई ऐसे सोच रही हूँ ये क्या, oh god, what is this, what exactly is happening? And then suddenly one day something happened. So I saw like a drop of blood that happened. Oh god, such vivid memories I
Where were
have of
you?
that.
Where were you?
I was at my home and actually I had to go somewhere and I was really excited क्योंकि वो proactive बच्चे होते हैं ना, हर चीज के लिए excited होते हैं. जीवन में हर चीज के लिए. बच्चे नहीं होते टीचर, they're about to ask for volunteers, who would like to volunteer for XYZ thing, they just say volunteer. I'm gonna be there, you know. मेरा वही सीन था. तो मैं I had to go somewhere and I was taking out my clothes, I was planning क्या चल रहा है, कैसे होने वाला है, and then suddenly and I got that blood clot of, not clot exactly, drop of blood. And again, very academically brilliant, smart, intelligent child. The entire irony of it is she thought, because she had never heard what a period was. To her, a period was mathematics period, English period, timetable, classroom. That was a period, a full stop. That was a period. Abhi, I saw that drop of blood and now I'm thinking, okay, what this could be. And then I went up to my mom and guess what I told her? I said, Mom, I think there's a pimple.
That has burst.
There's a pimple down that burst. And my mother was like, she obviously got it. That what's happening. It could be, why would anyone have a, why would a 13-year-old person?
All right, 13-year-old. So that means we start schooling at the age of 3 to be safe.
I was 10, seventh grade, I guess. Perfect timing, by the way. Perfect timing. Although my friends have had, like, some of my friends had it way before me, but I was like, I mean, from what I heard, like in my peer group, I think this was the perfect timing. Everybody was getting either ek mahina aage, ek mahina piche, something along these lines.
No, but like 13 years of existence and so many years of schooling, still a child that gets their period is unaware of what is happening in their own body. Good job, education system. Good job in that.
I don't know. I didn't know at that point in time what was happening.
But like imagine the failure of education system to educate people about their own bodies.
Behen, you can't. So I think now the adolescence age, especially for women, it is shifted to, like, it starts at 8, from what I am aware of. So adolescence.
The average age at which girls get their period is around 11 in India, from what I have.
Yeah, but it starts for most at 8. Yeah. Whereas they teach us about menstruation while we're in grade 8. So we're about 13, 14, along those lines, right?
And
we get, and the average age is 11. So imagine.
And like pointing out that even if they are teaching us about menstruation, whatever they are teaching, I do not think it is very helpful.
I'll tell you a very funny thing actually. By the time they teach us about menstruation, tab tak na wo classroom mein, school mein, that culture had already established jahan pe menstruation was like something has happened. If a girl gets her period in the class, something has happened. There is an event. Nobody is willing to study. Kuch ho gaya hai. There is some amusement happening. Like imagine there was a term called bread jam. In my class, people used to address period as bread jam. They spoiled bread jam for me. They used to say it. Imagine, I'm not even kidding.
This bread jam ho gaya.
They used to address periods as, and they used to address vagina as a sharpener or a sharpener.
Ooh. Oh my God.
Classmates, and a penis as a pencil. I mean, this is just silly. I would
like to get back to my agenda and inform everybody that a vagina is called a vagina, and saying it to increase the count vagina, and a penis is a penis. Please, guys, use the terms that were invented by science and do not get creative.
Abhi pata hi nahi tha na us time tak. We were not aware of, like, I mean, I was, because I did an MUN on LGBTQI plus community, so I was mildly aware of what all of these things are, but my classmates would not.
The class that we are talking about and the school that we are talking about is like a privileged school, upper middle class people coming in. It's in Delhi, and like people have a very bougie-ish lifestyle in there. They party. We have like 3 farewells just to give farewell to the 12 standard people, and this is the situation.
This is what I'm saying. Affluence, literacy, privilege. All of these things fail when it comes to women's bodies.
True.
No matter how affluent you are, no matter how literate you are, you still somewhere have that internalized bias or prejudice where you continue to object them about the kind of clothes they're wearing, or
Oh
you
my
take it a
god.
level higher and you continue to object on even the choices that they make for themselves, coming
And
down to
like,
abortion.
do you think that while people in your class were, starting their menstrual cycle, were there girls who were taking a lot of leaves while they were menstruating? Or like, was there a system that accommodated that, considering that if this human being is starting something that is totally natural, there should be a system to accommodate that. And I used to complain about this in corporates and companies, but then I realized that this is something that does not exist in our school as well. I remember having conversations with my
Are
behens
you talking about a period
back then.
leave?
No, period leave to leave it. It is like job wala, that is an entirely different discussion. But I remember having conversations with my behens while I was in school that they are going to take an off from a school day because they have their period. So why is the education system, which, and this is like something that can and that should be accommodating it, and people living in such a privileged area are not able to continue with their school education day that day, in spite of having access to pads and whatnot, clean water, soap, sanitation, excellent sanitation facilities. They still take leave from their regular school day and miss out on their education because they are
Yeah.
on their period. And the situation that is there in the rural areas and lesser privileged areas is
I
even
think
worse. People just drop out.
I might, okay, don't quote me on this, but from what I have read and from what I'm aware of, I think nearly 23 million girls drop out of schools annually in India due to lack of menstrual hygiene management facilities.
True.
23 million girls. Let that
That
sink in India annually. Yes,
that
they drop out of
is
school because they do not have access to menstrual hygiene management facilities. I mean, okay, so non-menstruators, imagine missing out on life because you cannot manage a bodily function.
I do
Like
not
imagine
even
not
care about life.
imagine you have to take an off from work because you cannot poop.
Yeah, I'm not even talking
What you're
about
done.
work because, like, then your employer expects you to work in order to give you salary and everything, and I do not expect you to party. Imagine leaving a school day, a regular school day, because you are on your period or because, like, you are menstruating. That is insane and sad.
I think taking a step forward from there, talking about PMS, right? PMS, for all those who are not aware of it, it's fine. First of all, if you're not aware of it, it means premenstrual syndrome, right? And I think it is a term which is thrown around like this.
She's
If a woman
PMSing.
is if a woman is slightly angry, if a woman is slightly off, man, she's PMSing. It's
Not
that
just
time of the
slightly angry or slightly off. If a woman is trying to put her point forward that you do not agree with, she's PMSing that day.
month.
That this girl is batshit crazy. She does not have any idea what she's talking about. Stop PMSing.
Yeah, so it's thrown out like this. It's that time of the month. Oh, you must be having mood swings. Oh, it's PMS. Okay, so first of all, I
What
think
is PMS, Srishti?
let's get down to PMS, right? Now, and
Yeah,
PMS, and let's talk about the basic association of mental health and menstruation, right? We're all familiar with what menstruation is, we're all familiar with what mental health is. If not entirely, we have a basic understanding of it, right? Now, how does mental health and menstruation affect, go hand in hand per se? Now,
it is.
what happens during menstruation? Essentially, there are two hormones in a woman's body, not just two hormones that are specific in this case. There's the estrogen and then there's progesterone, right? And estrogen is a happy syndrome. Is a happy, not syndrome, is a happy hormone. My bad, right? Estrogen is a happy hormone. It's correlated with serotonin secretion. It makes you happy, right? Progesterone, on the other hand, it correlates to anxiety, fear, sadness. What happens during menstruation? Estrogen plummets. The estrogen secretion in our body plummets, whereas progesterone increases. It sharply increases. This does not create a mood balancing effect. This kind of disturbs you. which is why women tend to have mood swings or sudden lapses of mood changes when they're menstruated or before they're menstruated, sometimes even after it. And just because this happens, or on a like saying it roughly on every month, just because this happens very regularly does not mean we can invalidate these feelings, right? You cannot, even as non-menstruators, as menstruators, you cannot invalidate these feelings just because oh har mahine hota hai. Not really. I mean, that's such a shallow thing to say. That's such a wrong thing to say कि because har mahine hota hai we're going to invalidate these feelings. No. So this is a common misconception, a common myth that occurs. Ki mood swings are just in the air. No, mood swings are real. They're correlated to our hormones when we're menstruating, and sometimes we do not even have a control over it.
And this is like speaking of people who have a healthy menstrual cycle, the people who have irregular periods or PCOD, their system works just in an entirely different way, and
that's a completely different story.
There is a
whatever I said here, it's a very generalized. It's like a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that is on a happy day. On a happy day, you will feel slightly off your game.
I'm in no means an expert. Feel free to correct me if you want. This is something I have over the years, as a means
two doctors that are listening to this podcast, please correct us if we are wrong.
Yeah, in case I said something that could be modified, altered, or is incorrect, please feel free to also, maybe leave a comment or hit me up with like what's wrong, and I'll probably correct it in the next episode.
And also to get on to bring out my controversial side, while women are ovulating while people are ovulating, I'm so sorry, I am purposefully correcting myself because I also do not have a perfect vocabulary, not a very inclusive vocabulary. So correction, we in this household use the word people and not women while talking about menstruation. So when people are ovulating, at that particular point of time, the amount of testosterone that is in their body increases. And who are the people who have testosterone? Any guesses in the house? You know the answer. Men are the people who have testosterone. So the next time and you come in and tell me why I am not tolerating your bullshit,
just regularly. Just putting it out there. I think women also have testosterone. It's just like
it does. It's like
the level in our body is slightly less.
It's like it is something that is found more in
men
body. Yeah, in a male body. So next time, if I am ovulating and you come to me and tell me why I am not taking your bullshit that I would have taken baki ke 3 hafta of that month, it is because I am just more like you due to my hormonal structure right now. So I am just not going to be, offering you the kind of compassion that are usually
and also
from experience.
Again, normalizing it. Everyone has hormones and nobody likes to mess with them or be messed by hormones. So normalize women having hormones. Do not make a big deal out of it. Women are hormonal. It's that time of the month, and stop. It's better to ask, right? And sometimes maybe it's a human reaction and not something to do with them being on their periods. Like, do better. As a society, do better.
I love how Srishti just puts a pillow before criticizing people. Anywho, so
coming back to my period story, coming back to that,
we just went in 100 different directions.
Yeah. So I told my mom it's a pimple. She said no, it's not a pimple. She taught me how these things work, and my first question was, क्या ये पापा को भी होता है? I asked her, does this happen to dad as well? And okay, hold on horses. And she was like, no. And then I went by like all the women I knew back then. I started going in a list. Grandmom, aunt, this aunt, that aunt. And she was like, yes. And then once like I familiarized myself with the concept of it, I went to my dad. I was like, Dad, I'm done. And
Like,
suddenly something happened to me, and I was like, and I off.
so like
I
when
don't
you
remember.
went, I have a question. So when you went through the list of the women and like list of the human beings that you knew back then, कि इनको भी होता है, इनको भी नहीं होता है, इनको भी होता है. So did you then started connecting whatever you were being told right now to some sort of patterns that you might have seen in the past? कि maybe
Patterns
I
as
am
in?
like I am assuming कि दादी को नहीं होता होगा और like मम्मी को होता, अगर बुआ को होता होगा तो वो उस टाइम पे दिया नहीं जलाती होंगी, या फिर मम्मी को होता होगा तो वो ऐसे XYZ नहीं करती होंगी उस
I
टाइम,
think
एंड देन
so.
एकदम से बल्ब जलता है ऊपर कि ओह मेक सेंस.
I think one of the conversations I had with mom was about not being allowed at some certain religious places, right?
Alright.
Other than that, I think, like I said, two things. Like, actually, first, I was a kid in a bubble. I mean, I was 13 and I was not supposed to be a kid, but I hate to greet it. I
13
was a
year
kid.
olds are kids. 13-year-olds are
Yeah.
kids.
Today, not so much. 13-year-olds are giving me imposter symptoms.
They're amazing kids, but they are still kids. Not
Yeah.
like, because I think that we just put such a negative connotation to the word kid कि इसको तो कुछ ऐसे पता ही नहीं होगा. We need to change that, because when we take away,
Ageist है ना, he thought to ageist है. He thought to ageist है.
हाँ
He
मतलब
13-year-olds and all of that shit.
yeah,
Don't associate intelligence and maturity with age. For sure. Like, I mean, whoever says with age comes wisdom, it doesn't. I've met a lot of old people who are just either dumb or immature.
and also
So,
because when we stop using the word kid for a 13-year-old, we are also putting them in shoes of a responsibility that they did not sign up for, because then it's like this 13-year-old person is doing some XYZ thing, so they just get more accountability for the things that they are doing, which as a society we should absolutely not put on them. A 13-year-old child should not be accountable to that extent, whatever I like, to an extent where which you do not, to an extent to which you do not even hold your policymakers accountable, then you try to put that burden on them. So in this household, we use the word child, kid, and without taking away the intelligence and the power and the respect we have that for that particular child and kid.
ठीक है. So, talking about patterns that I observed. So, I was a kid. I was observant, but I had not particularly observed any of these things. The only
Yes.
thing I had observed was my mom not going to the religious place she goes to while menstruating. This is something I noticed.
Fair.
Her not participating in religious activities is something I noticed. Right?
Fair.
Apart from that, I personally did not. So I have heard that sometimes women are told not to go near the pickles. Sometimes they're asked not to go into the kitchen. They're like, in a lot of villages, women are supposed to eat separately, like while menstruating. So nothing of this sort happened in my house. I have been fairly privileged like that. And also, I think the fact that I went up to my father and I could tell him that I was menstruating, and till now I can do that.
Open
So the other day I was
communication.
just menstruating and I was telling my father asked me what's up, because I could be seeming low, I guess. He's like, what's up? And I was like, I'm menstruating. And my paternal and maternal grandmothers were sitting there and they were shocked, abysmal state of shock. They're like, ये आपने क्या कर दिया? गुनाह हो गया ये,
This was
गुनाह.
our little secret. Secret of our little community.
They're like, I'm a revolutionary who's broken into this world.
Cat out of the bag.
And they were, although they were in an abysmal state of shock, they sat there in indifference. Arey, kuch hua hai? A word has been mentioned. We will not take notice of it. Why? Menstruation exists. We have experienced it for 40 years of our life. We will not take notice of it. Why? Why? They were indifferent to it. And then when my dad left, they were like, is this really a thing you would want to tell your dad? And I'm not looking down on them. No way. It's not their fault. I have had so many conversations with both of my grandmothers. It's not their problem. They didn't know about it. They were married off when they were 17 and 18. And the other day I showed a menstrual cup to my grandmom. And she was in shock. She was like, oh, something like this exists. And she was she was like, I mean, time as a concept had just faded in front of her eyes. It had just faded.
But
Like
imagine,
imagine,
but
she
imagine
did
the
not even have access to sanitary napkins. I think that has
exactly, exactly.
more to do with my family's arc of coming into influence. Like when until their generation, my family was not as economically well off. Now they are, so we kind
And
of.
also, I think that the science for just women's health is something that is not keeping up with the current science in there.
And
We
mind
are
you,
we are
it's not
shipping
like my
people.
grandmother. It's not like my grandmother is illiterate, by the way. She's extremely, she's well read, well educated. She writes so well. She had a career of her own. She was a working woman. She's phenomenal in all respects.
The
I mean, but
society is
then
to
we
blame.
don't
Yeah,
have
matlab,
knowledge.
imagine this. The science on one hand has reached a point wherein people are paying in Dogecoin to send off people to space, to Mars, like whatever Elon Musk is up with nowadays. And on the same hand, just and in the same country, women die during childbirth. Birth. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
they do. Maternal mortality rate is really bad in India. It's from what I have heard, it's improving, but I don't see how, because a lot of this data is probably either incomplete or fabricated. Maybe it's not. Who knows? Who's to say? But
Indian data collection agencies are not doing a great work in general, but especially when it comes to women's issues, nobody is holding them accountable for the things that they have been doing. Anyway,
I think
circling back to what was your
it's like
physical
when we're talking
reaction?
about
Huh.
adding a point to that. Like imagine we're on a road to become the most populated nation in the world. We're about to reach like the maximum number of people a country could probably have, and we, if not now with COVID, 2 years ago, we were touted as like the most, like the countries to look out for. We were the fastest developing nations as a country. And imagine in the very same country there are women who depend on tree barks, on rough cloth, waste cloth, and who have to drop out of school because of a
Menstruation.
ordinary bodily function,
That
because
happens
of
to
something
fifty
that's
percent of the
extremely
population.
natural.
That happens to
That's
50% of the
natural.
population. It is not even something. It is not even a solution to something that is extremely niche, that is extremely specific, extremely targeted. It is a solution for something that is experienced by 50% of the entire population of this world, and still there is such a poor response to it. It just, I don't know what to say. Disappointing,
Right,
at the very
right,
least.
right. So I think first off, what's needed is advocacy, a lot of advocacy when
Vagina,
it comes to
vagina,
menstruation.
vagina, vagina, vagina.
Yeah, even that. I mean, anything sales. All advocacy is good advocacy, but primarily, I think a lot of initiatives are now centering in urban spaces, at least, and they're trying to reach rural areas with their
Rural areas.
advocacy. But I think more field work with regards to this is required. A lot of, I think we need a good campaign or a good
A lot of
platform to
organizations
advocate
are doing a great
issues.
job. I just was looking, through the resources that were catering to rural areas
Yeah.
for packages, like for care packages during pandemic, and I just found 4 or 5 organizations that also included menstrual pads in that monthly care package, and I was so like,
I mean, more
I love
power
you
to
guys.
everyone who's trying to contribute to this world in one way or the other.
Yeah, it was like
And
dal, chawal, atta,
yeah,
menstrual pads,
and
and I
then
was like, thank you.
right, right, absolutely. I think so. And apart from advocacy, something that I would really, I mean, without the fear of being politically incorrect, if that's even, I don't personally think
Everything.
it's politically incorrect, but I would take the leverage of going ahead and saying that we as a country need to reevaluate the way we choose our decision makers. And
Okay, I would plus one on
and
that.
and as much as we'd like to believe, the people who are already making the policies or decisions, they are not well versed with the concept of menstruation themselves. So if they are not well versed with it, they're not willing to hire experts who are. We cannot expect them to make laws or create schemes catering to this issue.
I
So
was
I mean,
going
and
through,
come to
I
think of
was,
it, come to think of it, menstruation is correlated to the overall fight of gender equality.
it is.
There is practically no way we can achieve gender equality without giving impetus to menstruation, and that's something people don't realize.
Do you think that I know that this might sound like a conspiracy theory or whatever, but do you think that they really do not realize what they are doing? And I'm not speaking about like my father, I'm not speaking about your brother, I'm speaking about the people who are in such high places and in such powerful places. Do you think they really do not realize what they are doing and they do not have an agenda behind it? Because, like, look at the kind of structure they have in their internal organization. Do you think such brilliant minds of our country do not realize that you do not have women in your main cabinet? Do you think such brilliant minds in our country do not realize that the elected female members of Lok Sabha seats is below 15%? I'm 100% sure, maybe below 10%. I'll have to look it up again. We will fact check
I
up
think
on this.
I think I think parliament is a reflection of society. I know I use the
True.
term reflection of society a lot of times, but we cannot single-handedly say parliament में females नहीं है या women representation नहीं है. Women representation नहीं है. Think of most boards, most Fortune 500 companies.
True.
Think of
I am not saying that whatever
every
a
sector that exists.
I'm not saying whatever a general person is doing, they are doing it out of some particular agenda, out of some particular purpose. But speaking of the extremely privileged section of society who has a lot of resources to educate themselves, a lot of power, a lot of money to do better,
I'll tell you
is
why. And mind you, I'm just giving an answer to that. It's not something I endorse. It's not something that is right.
all right.
There's nothing to
Perfect.
endorse here. It's not right. It's just an answer. It's just my
I'm very
probably
curious. I'm very
explanation to
curious.
why this is right. Okay. So menstruation is considered a woman's issue, and women, like everything that happens to them, metro में safe नहीं feel हो रहा है, एक अलग
डब्बा बनवा दो.
compartment बना लो. We are being judged for
We are happy about the alag metro ka dabba, by the way, not complaining, not acting bratty. We are happy about the
mixed views.
we'll get
क्या
back
करें?
to it.
But
We'll get back to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's get back to it. But I think starting this from top,
Yeah.
women, this menstruation is a woman's issue, and women have discovered कि कोई ना कोई रास्ता उन्हें निकालना पड़ेगा. कैसे मेट्रो में द सेफ नहीं फील होता है, एक अलग कंपार्टमेंट बना लेंगे. शॉर्ट्स पहनने के लिए मना किया जा रहा है, पैंट्स पहन के चले जाएंगे. मतलब we'll reach the
पजामा
place,
पहन लेंगे ऊपर से.
we'll reach the destination, we'll remove our pants, get back to our shorts. We have found a way out of everything. We have found how to survive with what we have while fighting for what we want, while fighting for, we have become realists while trying to be idealists. That's how women, the state of women are, state of women is as of now. Same is with menstruation. Women are coping with it regardless of however privileged they are. I am coping with it, maybe using the most expensive product that exists in the market because I can afford it. A woman who cannot afford such a product, or a menstruator who cannot afford such a product, he or she is coping. They are coping with cloth, with tree barks, with cotton. All menstruators are just coping with it. And men, because they practically face no discomfort by it, they're not bothered by it. I would not like to use the word men because transgender women do not menstruate. Non-menstruators do not menstruate. They are on an everyday basis. Menstruation is not a discomfort to them, which is why they're just going on with their lives. And humans, by the nature of being humans, we tend to flow. We flow with life. We do not stop, consciously think, and then decide. So menstruators, like everything that happens, क्योंकि जुगाड़ is a concept which I think सभी जुगाड़ तो निकाल ही देते हैं. We have decided how to cope up and how to manage. Even while we're menstruating, crying, we'll pop up a pill and we'll go. Cramps हो रहा है, we'll heat up a pad and keep it. We'll not go on Google say कि cramps क्यों हो रहे हैं, क्या कोई तरीका बेहतर है? नहीं, जो एज ओल्ड तरीका चला रहा है वही चलाते हैं, right? And we tend to cope with it, no matter how privileged we are, no matter how less privileged we are. Just such a wrong thing to say, which is not how status quo should be. I think that's the primary difference between normative statements and positive statements, or normative economics and positive economics. I'm describing the status quo. I'm not saying what it should be or what it ideally needs to be as of now. That's why people don't pay attention to menstruation, because it still is considered a woman's issue. It still is considered something that only affects a section of population.
I would just like to add to that. Bang on. I think that it is pretty much right, but also the fact that we have been desensitized to the entire thing. कि मतलब ड्रॉप आउट रेट इतना सारा है तो क्या, like this is the thing that I was discussing with my best friend Ishika Agarwal the other day. I just have to mention it. She is a big part of my personality. For me, she is the reason I'm so awesome. Like, whatever happens in this pandemic, we as citizens of a country and citizens of this world should not get desensitized to the death rates that are happening right now. Because you know the reason why everybody is so anxious right now about the deaths that are happening. I'm so sorry, I cannot speak because it just gets thoda cry.
Because we're familiarized with them. Someone we know is dying.
Yes,
right?
Because अगर वो ऐसा मेरे को कोई डेली आके बता रहा है कि इतना लाख लोग मरा, तो फिर I know एक person in that 1 लाख लोग जो मरा, and that is bothering me. We are still not desensitized to that issue. We are still sensitized. We still feel about itna sala.
We were never sensitized in the first place. Gender sensitivity among other sensitivities हमें सिखाई ही नहीं गई ना बचपन से.
Exactly. तो मतलब ऐसा हमारी वो वाली sensitization आ ही नहीं रही है. अब अगर like boys are like, तो फिर मेरे को क्या incentive है to participate in that discussion? Do you realize that your mother faces the same issue? Do you realize your sister faces the same issue?
Okay, hi everyone. So we messed up big time. जब हमने ये वाला एपिसोड रिकॉर्ड करा था, we did not realize how much we talked and how much content was essentially there. So it became a very long episode. We are gonna post it in 2 parts. The second part would be coming out next week. So we need some help. Just tell us if you want to hear like episodes that are more than an hour long, or if you want us to reduce the duration of the episode. And B, if you are fine with this kind of format wherein we post it in 2 parts. And in the next episode, we will be talking some more about periods, and also I'll be sharing a controversial opinion. Yeah, so I'll be sharing a controversial opinion that I think everybody, regardless of their gender, should hear. So yeah, see you next time. Bye bye.
Please like, share, subscribe, and share. Like, you need to share this video because we have tried to make it inclusive for all age groups, all genders across the spectrum, and talked about like 1,000 different things.